Welcome, everyone. I am Bob Wurzelbacher, the director of the Respect Life Office for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, and this is our video podcast series that we call Being Pro-Life. This is part of a series we're producing on the new ballot initiative in the state of Ohio coming in November of 2023 to amend the Ohio Constitution to include something called the right to reproductive freedom. And in this series, we're going to discuss what the amendment says, why it's so dangerous for Ohio, and how it is you can get involved in educating the public. Today's guest is Brian Hickey, Executive Director for the Ohio Catholic Conference. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob, for having me. I appreciate all your work getting the word out on this dangerous and harmful amendment, and looking forward to talking more with you.
So, Brian, Executive Director of the Ohio Catholic Conference, why don't you tell us real quick, what is your role?
Thanks, Bob. So the Catholic Conference of Ohio represents all the bishops, all the dioceses of Ohio in public policy matters, and I oversee our staff of 6 full-time members at the Catholic Conference, and we focus on advocating for our Catholic schools and anything else that the bishops want to advocating on related to Catholic social and moral teaching.
So, Brian, as many of our listeners already know, the Catholic Conference is strongly supporting efforts to defeat this November ballot initiative because it could eliminate parental notification law surrounding abortion. It could reduce typical safety standards for women, and it can make abortion legal for virtually any reason for all 9 months of pregnancy. So if people want some more details on why it is that we make those claims, you can listen to our March episode with Peter Rains, Executive Director of Ohio Right to Life. But today we're going to focus not so much on the ballot initiative coming in November, but the special election coming up in August right here in Ohio that could have a big impact on the November ballot. So Brian, tell us what it is that people are going to be voting on in August here in Ohio.
Yes. So the Ohio legislature recently decided that Ohio will have an August special election to ask in what is called Issue 1, whether a proposed amendment to the Ohio Constitution should receive 60% of eligible voters to pass it, as opposed to its current 50% plus 1. The amendment also asks if Ohioans proposing a constitutional amendment should receive signatures from all 88 Ohio counties instead of its current 44. And it also eliminate a 10-day grace period for when citizens who have initiated a proposed constitutional amendment initially submit their signatures to the Secretary of State's office, and they don't have enough. Currently, they have a 10-day grace period. If Issue 1 passes in August, it would eliminate that provision.
So obviously, I guess those second two you mentioned, how many counties you need to get signatures from, as well as the elimination of the 10-day grace period, that of course cannot affect this November ballot initiative because those signatures are due in July and we're voting in August, right? On the other hand, the 60-40 versus 50%, that will affect immediately, right? What will happen in November? Is that correct?
That's right, Bob. So if Issue 1 passes in August, if 50% of Ohioans vote for it, then the proposed amendment in November would need at least 60% of Ohioans to support it to pass and become a constitutional amendment.
So 50% plus 1, that's a simple majority, and this would be changing it to requiring at least 60% of the people to vote for something in order to pass an Ohio amendment. So that'll affect that November ballot. So it's fair to say that if you vote yes on 1, it'll be more difficult to pass the amendment in November. And if you vote no on 1, it'll be more likely that this particular bill could pass in November.
Yeah, that's fair to say, Bob.
So the Ohio bishops already came out very strongly in the November election against this amendment. So we know this. So what is the stance on this August election?
Yes. All the bishops of Ohio Board of Directors have elected not to take a position on Issue 1 in August. We do not see the question in August as a strictly moral question, and that's if it has a moral effect, then the Catholic Conference would likely take a position on any bill in the state legislature and also on proposed constitutional amendments or other initiated statutes that come up in an election.
So what does this mean in general? So the bishops took a clear stance to vote no on the November ballot because we don't want this amendment here to the Constitution that would enshrine basically a right to abortion and other concerns as well. But just in general, when they take a stance of yes or no on a bill versus neutral, what does that mean for us? Is there a you have to vote the same way as a Catholic, or what more specifically does that stance mean?
Yes. So, like you said, Bob, in November, for instance, proposed constitutional amendment on what's called reproductive freedom goes to the ballot. We are asking all Catholics and encouraging all Catholics to vote no on it. And that essentially means that the Catholic Church clearly has something to say about protecting the lives of preborn children and the role of parents in raising their children and having say in their decisions when they're under 18 years old. There is a clear Catholic teaching and tradition on why we would oppose such an amendment. We ask that Catholics use our guidance to shape their conscience and for their decision-making on which way to vote in November. But in August, the bishops have a neutral position. So we see our role as informing Catholics statewide that there is an August special election to practice their faithful citizenship and inform themselves, inform their consciences, and vote. But because a question on how to amend the Ohio Constitution does not have a strict moral provision to it, there's not Catholic moral social teaching in our tradition that would answer this question, we are staying fully neutral.
But basically what it means to be neutral is that a Catholic in good conscience could be for or against a bill that says, hey, we need to change the threshold from 50 to 60%. We need to change the threshold from half of the counties to all counties. Those are all issues that people could disagree on as good Catholics, where if they take a stance on a particular issue of yes, they're saying Catholic teaching suggests that we should be for this issue. Or if they take a no stance on some issue, Catholic teaching suggests that we should be against this issue.
Well said, Bob.
Okay, so knowing that, what does that mean then? If you're a parish worker, or if you want to talk to people about the August election, right? What can you say and what can you not say since the bishops are neutral?
Yes. So like I said, we are encouraging Catholics to tell their family members, their friends, their neighbors, their fellow parishioners that there is an August special election. As I said, that is part of what we call faithful citizenship. So we as Catholics are called to participate in political life and exercise the right we have as citizens to participate in our democracy. And that's something that we would do for any election, but especially in this August special election, where we realize the average voter might not know that this is happening. So we encourage Catholics to inform their fellow parishioners, explain what the question is, explain the various consequences. But again, because the bishops of Ohio have elected to have a neutral stance, we do not encourage anybody to tell their fellow Catholics they have to vote yes or they have to vote no, according to Catholic teaching.
Right. Let me try an example. But you could say, in order to express what it is that the August election is about. So you're talking to somebody, well, what's happening? What's going to happen? You could actually go so far and say, hey, it's going to change the threshold for passing a constitutional amendment from 50%, which is simple majority, to 60%. And you can even, just for summary, just for clarity, you can say, and we'll do other things to make it more difficult to pass. So if you vote yes on issue 1 in August, it'll make it more difficult to pass the amendment in November. If you vote no on the August special election, it will make it more likely that the November issue would pass. So you could say that much, right? That's not telling people how to vote. Because I can imagine someone saying, well, I had a 60, 40, 50. I don't know. What am I supposed to do? Right? So you just spell it out. It's going to be more difficult to pass the amendment if you vote yes. It's going to be easier to pass the amendment in November if you vote no. So, and it'll be okay to say that kind of thing in a parish context.
Yes, that's fair enough, Bob.
So let's move on then to voter registration. So I know that not just the Catholic Conference, but the U.S. bishops, the Catholic Church in general, has always encouraged people to vote, right, to participate in elections. But there seems to be perhaps a little more push right now than at least I have heard before, because I guess the issue is so important coming up in November. So we're encouraging people to do voter registration events at their parish. And you even have some resources on your website, I noticed, to help show people how to do this. So why don't we talk about that? So if you go to the Ohio Catholic Conference website, I think the easiest way, if you just go to your web browser and search for Ohio Catholic Conference, you'll come up here at ohiocathconf.org. So here's the homepage. And then right over here on the left, you can see, first of all, you can see that defeat Ohio's proposed abortion amendment is a little bit lower, but right here at the top, 2023 voting registration. Brian, why don't you talk us through what it is that's up on the website here? So I'll click on this.
Yes, thanks, Bob. So we, in accordance with faithful citizenship, are encouraging all Catholics to register to vote and get out to vote in August, in November, and whenever there is an election in Ohio. So specifically in August, on our webpage, as you can see on your screen, we have important dates for the upcoming election. There's a deadline to register to vote, a deadline to do early voting and absentee voting, and then, of course, on election day on August 8th, you have to
Right.
vote.
So now some people listen to this on a podcast, so we should probably mention those dates. So Monday, July 10th is the deadline to register to vote. So if you want to have a voter registration day at your parish related to the August election, you need to do it before July 10th. So that's a good point to remember. So sometime in June or early July. And then you can also tell people that people can begin absentee voting as early as Tuesday, July 11th. And I think I'm right, Brian, that you don't need any reason to do absentee. You can just choose you want to do absentee voting, right?
That's right. Yes. So if you're going to be on vacation on August 8th or for any other reason, your Tuesdays in the summer are really busy, you can certainly choose to vote.
Right. You can absentee ballot or early in person, either way. And then early in person voting will end on Sunday, August 6th. And Monday, August 7th is the last day to drop off your absentee ballot. And of course, election day itself is Tuesday, August 8th. But there's so many ways to vote on those important dates. Sorry, continue now. What's on the website, Brian?
Yes, thanks, Bob. So what else is on the website? There are sample bulletin announcements. So if you want to hold a voter registration drive at your parish, say after Mass, having a table in the back of your church or outside, you're certainly welcome to do that. Churches are allowed to do that. We are also partnering with Knights of Columbus statewide. So if there's a Knight of Columbus at your parish, they might be taking the initiative on this, but we really encourage any parishioner, if they have a passion for doing voter registration, to approach your pastor and maybe point them to the screen that Bob is sharing, to the CCO website, to know that this is bishop approved.
So thanks, Brian. And I did click on the sample bulletin announcements, and here they are. Just real quick, if people wanted to see them. Anything you want to say? They're just pretty self-explanatory, I suppose. It's just 3 examples, Brian.
Yes, just 3 examples. If you want to put something in your parish bulletin beforehand, if this could be used as a pulpit announcement right before Mass ends or before Mass starts, parishes can use it in a few different ways.
Okay, tell us what else is on the webpage, Brian.
So there's a 10 easy steps to plan a voter registration drive infographic. So meet with your pastor, share what the Catholic Conference authorizes in terms of voter registration. And then if you go through all these steps, they're kind of self-explanatory, and hopefully we'll get more Catholics to register to vote in August and actually get out to vote.
And I can add that it's super easy, particularly if you can do it in the church with like Wi-Fi. Just grab some iPads or laptops or something that you can have, because you can do all of this online. You don't need to fill out registration cards, right? If you go to voteohio.gov, are you familiar with that page, Brian? You can tell how easy it is to do some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's very easy. Just click on the links as you see there. You can know if you are registered to vote. You can update your voter registration just in a few clicks. And
so someone walks up to your table, you click on look up voter registration, type in your name, put in your county, hit submit, and there it is. I am registered. You check your address, make sure that's the right address. And if it is, you're all set. And if it's not, you could update if you need to update your address, or you can just register to vote online right there. You can do all this while they're there. All they need, make sure if they have their driver's license on them or Ohio identification card, and they need to know what the last 4 digits are of their social security number. That's all they need. And you can do it right there with them online. It's super, super easy. All you have to do is pick a date, advertise at your parish, obviously get your pastor's permission, as that's always the first thing. But after that, you should be all set. Do you have a suggestion if you bring it up to your pastor and your pastor says, oh, that sounds like a partisan thing? I don't think we should be doing that at the parish. What is an easy, quick response to your pastor if he initially thinks this doesn't sound like a good idea?
Yes, Bob, I would encourage them directing their pastor to our website, what you just pulled up, and to the voter registration page so that they can see that this is authorized by the bishops of Ohio and further authorized by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And it is particularly nonpartisan. We never tell Catholics what party to vote for, which candidate to vote for in regards to voter registration. It doesn't have anything to do with anything partisan. It's just encouraging them to practice their faithful citizenship.
Yeah, it's right here on the Ohio Bishop's website. And then if that's not enough, you can take them to the USCCB official document, of course, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. And as you mentioned, you have the 10 easy steps infographic. So it's even telling you how to do this at your parish specifically. So it's clearly encouraging parishes to do this at their parish. And related to the August election, particularly to do this in the next few weeks up to that July 10th registration deadline. And then, of course, again, the registration deadline for the November election, I'm sure, is in October. It's probably right around October 10th or something like that, I imagine, 30 days
Yes,
prior to
30
the
days
election.
before.
Right. So you can do it again in September to encourage
Yes.
people, make sure people vote. Do you have any stats or even anecdotal stories related to how many people think they're registered and they're not? Or maybe they know they're not, but we just assume most people are and most people aren't registered, or that kind of thing?
Yes, typically people are not registered to vote. Statistics show that. And especially for an off year election when it's not an even year. If it's an August special election like we have here, voters are typically not registered. And even if they are registered, they never go out to vote. So that's the point with these voter registration drives and information guides, is that we can inform ourselves, inform others, and successfully practice our faithful citizenship. We're lucky to have this right in Ohio and in the United States, and we should act on it.
Right. So having these drives would hopefully encourage people that don't typically vote to vote, get people that assume they're registered but find out they're not registered, and show them how easy it is to do it. And with a typical low turnout election time, I mean, I don't know. I'd imagine it's probably crazy low, right? A typical August election might even be what, 10% of eligible voters or something?
Last year, it was about 10%, Bob.
Right, 10%. So you would think that if it in a close election where 10 to 20% of people are going to be voting, it could make a gigantic difference to encourage a higher percentage of people to vote. It could make a huge difference.
Yes.
So we really encourage people to go out there and have some voter registration events. All right, Brian. Well, so just to reiterate, we have this election coming up in August. The voter registration deadline is July 10th. So we're certainly encouraging parishes in the next few weeks here in June, or maybe that first weekend of July or so, to have some voter registration things. It's really simple. Have some tablets and some computers out there. You can do it all online and encourage people to do this. Get those resources on the Ohio Catholic Conference website in order to organize this at your parish. And you cannot be encouraging people to vote yes or no on one, but you can certainly educate them on what it will do. And just to reiterate, it will change the threshold to add an amendment to the Ohio Constitution from the simple majority of 50% plus one to a 60%, as well as require signatures from all 88 counties instead of just 44. And eliminate the grace period after the deadline for signature. So basically, it would make it more difficult to pass an amendment to the Ohio Constitution. So a yes vote on issue one will make it more difficult to pass the amendment in November, and a no vote on one will make it easier to pass an amendment in November. And of course, that will affect all future attempts at changing the Ohio Amendment for good or for bad. It will affect it in both directions. All right, Brian. Well, thanks for talking to us today about what's coming up in the August election, how it could affect the November ballot, and how we should be encouraging all of our fellow Catholics to get out the vote in August and in November. Thanks for coming on the show, Brian.
Thanks so much for having me, Bob. And your listeners can check out ohiocathconf.org, like you pulled up earlier, for all the topics that we advocate on, including for August and the upcoming November election as well.
Great. And I want to thank all of our viewers and listeners for tuning in on this episode of our Being Pro-Life series. Head to the website to view all the links talked about in this episode at www.catholicaoc.org/beingprolife. Thank you again for joining us today. I look forward to being with you next time.